What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Loop Live. My name is Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of loopcommunity.com. I'm also the host of the Loop Live show. Today, we have a great guest, Connor Sawyers, the founder, the man behind programmedsuccess.com. He's going to show us today what he does at Program Success. Program Success, they do custom Ableton sessions that are tailored and designed for your church and for your specific setup at your church. So if you want to automate lyrics or lighting or have a certain type of flow, you can actually hire Connor at Program Success to put all that together for you to save you a ton of time during the week. So if you're a worship leader right now who maybe spends 4, 8 hours, whatever, in Ableton Live, you can actually instead have Connor do all that for you. And then he sends you the session right before the weekend, and you're good to go. So he's going to actually show us today. I'm excited to actually talk with him because he's going to show us some of the tips that he uses as he's building Ableton sessions. And I'm actually really curious. I'm going to learn from him. I have a lot of questions I'm going to ask him, and it's going to be a great interview. So this is the first time I've ever interviewed someone about Ableton Live. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So if you guys have any questions at all, wherever you're watching this from, type them into the comment box, and we'll take some live questions if we have some. So type them into the comment box. We'll take live questions, and without further ado, here is my friend Connor Sawyers. What's up, man?
What's going on? What's going on, guys? So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So good to see you, man. So we met recently through a mutual friend, and you're down in Arizona?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite states in the United States.
It's great out here. It's below 100 degrees for the first time, so we're pretty happy down here, so it's going well.
Yep, the weather there is awesome. As long as it's not over 100, I'm all in for Arizona weather.
Everyone says it's unbearable. It's not. It's a couple months out of the year, and then the rest of the time it's beautiful. It's
great. Then you just hang out inside and play with Ableton Live, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
during the summer months, you're in the pool.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us all about Program Success. Why'd you start it? What's the point?
So Program Success, I started it back in March 2021. I started it because I was hanging out with a friend, and they were like walking me through everything that they went through COVID and how the church had to change and how he had to reprioritize a lot of stuff. And he just wasn't able to spend a ton of time on what he was usually doing, like Ableton Live and stuff like that. And he's like, I was just throwing something together, and it was never just exactly what I wanted, and it was just good enough. And I was like sitting there, and I was like, I want to be better than good enough gets the job done. I think we can do such a good job with the tools that we've been given, things like Loop Community and Tracks and all this technology that we have around us. So it's like, I want to be able to give the church something, even if they don't have the time, the support, or the resources. I want to be able to give them the highest quality resources that I can. So I started Program Success, just helping educate, teach Ableton, build Ableton sessions, just like you said, just setting people up for a win for the weekend.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So basically, people subscribe to you. Is it a weekly subscription, monthly subscription? How does that work?
We go month to month just so we can get planned out just as far as you want to get planned out. So once a month, we just it's like every week we are able to sit down, we chat, kind of like this, just over Zoom, just about the weekend, the previous weekend. We have a little bit of a debrief, but then we ask questions about the next weekend. You can let me know of anything that you want to see in your next weekend, any different songs, any different arrangements. And it's kind of your time to let me know exactly what you want to do.
That's cool.
So we meet every week.
At what point in the week do you need the set list from the worship leader?
It's really up to them. We definitely understand that sometimes it's just really, really in a pinch. So we're able to work up to Thursday. We always ask Friday, Saturday, just to have your set locked in to make sure that we can get everything set up for you as best as we can. Because we also like to be able to drop into your computer and set everything up so you don't even have to worry about that either. You can walk into your weekend on a Sunday morning and literally just press play.
I like that. That's a good tagline for your company right there. Just press
play. Yep.
Which that actually makes me think there must be a company with that, because I feel like that's just way too good. All right.
I think it's trademark.
Okay, yeah. All right. So I'm trademarking it right now. Okay. So go ahead and show us. You're going to show us. So you build sets in Arrangement View, right? Or are you
I do,
Session
yeah.
View guy? Okay. So I'm a Session View guy,
Okay.
and I am really curious to learn from you. Like,
hmm
sell me on Arrangement View, okay? Like, I want to
Okay.
see why you're using Arrangement View, how you're using Arrangement View. And so I think you're going to show us how you set up a song in Arrangement View. Like, let's
hmm
just say you purchased a track from Loop Community.
Right.
What is the first thing you do? So are you able
So
to
if
show us
you,
that?
I am. I'm gonna share my screen with you. So what I do is I'll just go straight to Ableton Live. I use Ableton 10 right now. So I'll open up a session, and it's interesting because a lot of people they work out of a template, and that's great. And I've worked out of templates many times, but for me, I like to work out of just a blank session. So you open it up. Can you see this all right?
Yeah, looks good.
Yep. So you open it up. I always add a folder for where I'm working with the Sunday. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I found this. I've got all of the tracks that I'm going to be using today, purchased from the community. So we're going to work on Lion and the Lamb right now. As you can see, you've got all of your stems there right away, and you're able just to have them named for you. It's super convenient. So the first thing I do is get tempos locked in. So I can see 90 BPM. I'll go up to our global time. I'll lock in 90 BPM, and then I'm good to drag all of my stems in. From there, everything is loading up, everything is buffering just to get everything ready to go. And you can even start to hear those clicks, everything like that as well. So the first thing I do is just I like to wait a little bit, make sure everything is there. The next thing I do, and again, this is super, super always up to anybody who's building the sessions. I'm a big believer that there's no right or wrong way to build them. It's really whatever works for you and your team best is the way you should do it. For me, I like to build all my sessions in a way that anybody on the team can understand them. That it doesn't matter who is running the session on the weekend, anybody can look at it and go, oh, I get that. So the first thing I like to do is just go through and name a couple of the stems a little bit shorter so at the glance of an eye, everybody can see exactly what I'm talking about. So I would go through and just name all of the stems, just something a little bit shorter, as well as take away those numbers in front. Ableton does a really good job of laying everything out, but there's a couple different things that I do that would make that a little bit complicated. So the reason I rename everything instead of having it say like 11 for channel 11 is I build all of my sessions, if that makes sense. I said I don't ever work out of a template. That's true to some extent. I always work out of these sessions that I build for my individual songs. And that way I can just always go back and load them up again really, really quickly. So after naming them all, the next thing I do, I would say a very crucial step. I will find my click, which is right here. And it's totally up to anybody who's using, again, I like to use MIDI click from Ableton that I've built. So the first thing that I'll do is I will automate my tempos. What that means is no matter where you are in the song, it is always going to be 90. And when you drag your new song in, which we'll get to a little bit later, it will automatically switch the tempo over for you. So if you're going from 90 to a couple other songs we're doing today, like Lion and Lamb, Living Hope, Waymaker, if you're going from Lion and Lamb into Living Hope, you're going from 90 to 72. I like it just to switch over for me. It'll go from one song into the next super simply and super smoothly. So the first thing I do is I warp and I make that follow. So all of these stems are now following this click, which I often rename tempo, and then whatever the tempo is. So tempo 90. I also am a big fan of caps, so I like to use caps.
Wait a minute.
So it says tempo 90.
You warped
go
them?
for it.
Maybe I missed
I
it because the
warped
video is covering it. Could we move the video to the other side? So, okay, so you warped and then you clicked on follow.
Yep. So what that does is when you warp it, it lets the tempo be changed of that clip. When you follow it, every other stem that's layered under or over this tempo is now looking to this, and it's going, this is the segment BPM,
Yeah.
90 BPM. So it'll be locked in here. No matter where I am in this box, it will always be 90, which is super helpful.
I find that
when you're trying
sometimes
to
when
run
I set
steps.
that follow and leader thing, it doesn't
Mhm.
actually follow until I like click on follow again. Like I have to almost like re-trigger it. Why is that?
So when you drag in a new session, when you have to re-click it, it is re-automating. The same thing is if I automated like my my cue off.
Yeah.
So if you see that and then I turn it off, now it's a little bit darker. All when you re-click that leader, all you're basically doing is re-enabling automation.
Got it.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, it does.
So
Okay.
yep. So it's tempo automation. There's a couple different ways to do it. You could do it down here and set it in your master song tempo, but that gets a little bit complicated. I like to be really precise, and the easiest way and the simplest way to do that is just right here. So if it gets off, just re-enable. It'll re-enable that automation, hop right back to 90.
Okay, got it.
The next thing I do is I like to group my stems out of the way. I like to use colors to just keep everything super organized. So I group them all together, and then I'll name it "The Lion and the Lamb," exactly what the song is. Lion and the Lamb. I'll color it blue, and now I can collapse that, and I can work on my clicks. So as I said, I don't use the clicks that come with Loop Community. I have, and they're great. I have nothing wrong with them. I've just grown used to using MIDI click. So I'm just going to show how I do that real quick.
And you don't use the built-in click in Ableton?
So we've got this built-in click, and it's great. It works.
Yeah.
But what I have just gotten used to is I use these foundations.
Yep.
And I'll just throw them in, and you just can load them into a simple MIDI channel.
Do you do that just because you like the sound of them?
I like the sound of them, and you can change the sound of them based on who you're playing with. Like I've had a couple drummers that are like super, super solid and strong, and they don't want to hear that. They would much, much rather just have, oh, I missed a step. I'm sorry. The next thing, if I'm going to use a MIDI click, I just take that volume on the tempo, the click that comes with Loop Community, all the way down, just so I can hear that MIDI click. But back to MIDI click. The reason I do that is so that if I wanted to ever get a different click sound, if I wanted to have that normal block, this is that standard. I use the number 5. This is the one I use. But another reason is if you have people who are super, super solid with rhythm and they don't want everything, you could just have the quarter notes. You can have the 8th notes, and then of course you can always add those 16th notes in if you needed to. There's also a bunch of different sounds that you could use. This is a gentle sound, a blip sound, a percussive sound, classic. I stick to number 5, that's just what I'm used to, but there's not really a perfect reason. I've just gotten used to it, and it works best for me and my team. So I've just been using MIDI click for a while now.
It's a nice sounding click.
I like it. It cuts to the next.
Can we just pause for 1 second, because I think you went through it really fast, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. That track that says tempo 90, that was the original click from Loop Community?
This is you can see down here in the sample window, it's the original click from Loop Community. If I turn it back up, you would even hear that very...
Okay. But you just muted it.
Clip.
But you muted it, and you made it the leader.
I made it the leader, so that click is leading all of the other stems.
Okay, got it.
I also try to keep everything plural, and there's a reason for that we'll get to later, because when you combine your songs, everything will be lined up together just to make it super, super tight and clean transitionally. So after I get all of my clicks and tempos done, the next thing that I do is I build in locators. And I've heard them called markers, locators, reference points, whatever you want to call them, it's the same thing. All it is, it's their little marking points to show where you are in a song. And the easiest way to do that is to build in MIDI clips. So I'm going to walk through how I do that. So the first thing that I do is, I'll make a MIDI channel, and you can do that just Shift-Command-T, or you can right-click and insert a MIDI track. After that, I just follow exactly what the guide and the cues say. If it's saying intro right here,
intro 2, 3, 4,
that's where I'm going to start my intro. So I'm going to have this be my count off, because that's where the band is just getting that tempo in.
What was the keyboard shortcut you just did to make that MIDI clip?
Yep. So I select my space, or you can click the first one and hold Shift. You want just to select this space right here. there's a couple different ways to get here. If you wanted to, you could just right click and you can insert a MIDI clip.
Yep.
Or you can shift Command M, it's the hotkey. It does the same thing, and it'll build in a MIDI clip right there. There's nothing in it, but the really awesome feature is you can name every single MIDI clip. So this is my count off. So then Command R, rename count off. And I'll do that for every single section.
Yeah.
So this is my intro.
Intro. Verse 2.
This is my verse. And I will go through and I'll rename all of these sections. It sounds super time consuming, but it's really not. But something that I just have started doing is I will kind of race myself. I'll start the song, and as it goes, I'll program everything out. So in reality, it'll only take me about 3 minutes. And the really cool thing is, once you do this one time, you don't have to do it again. And I'll show you how, and I'll show you what. Yeah.
You know what I used to do? Kind of like how you were saying that you were racing yourself. I would do that, but I also would warp it and change the tempo. I would actually play the song back like 10 BPM faster.
Oh, wow.
To get through it quicker. Yeah, to get through it quicker.
Yeah. It's funny. So a couple of people on my team and I, when we're programming stuff for the weekend, so I can't remember who it was, but at my church, someone started like kind of like a little contest. Like every like Wednesday, we'd go to Chick-fil-A for lunch, and the slowest person would have to buy everybody like the dipped cones at Chick-fil-A. Oh. So that's what we do. We'll sit and we'll get the weekend ready, and you can't make any mistakes, because if you make a mistake, then you're the guy has to pay.
So you go through the entire song and add these locators.
Turn around.
So then I'll just go through and I'll just repeat this process. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit. I did this a little bit earlier to be ready, and I can just drag it in. But I can show you exactly what I did. So I just keep repeating that process for the whole song, and I'm able to have everything there. And the huge benefit of having something like this is when you're in rehearsal on a Sunday morning or midweek and you're running with your team and you're like, hey guys, let's run that chorus again. You can just go, okay, cool. Right before that chorus.
Chorus, 2, 3, 4.
And you're running. A big benefit of running in arrangement views, that right there. You can start it from wherever. In session view, you can definitely do that. It's a little bit harder to get to this exact spot that you want.
Yeah, you have to like scrub ahead. It's kind of a pain.
You have to scrub ahead. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of an inconvenience. But with this, I can even open the guide and start it exactly one measure before if I'm wanting to go in this last chorus.
Chorus, 2, 3, 4.
It's amazing. Another huge thing is if you're ever in a moment where you want to move something around, a huge benefit of using tracks in this way is you can be super, super flexible. Say you're there on a weekend and you're sitting in this moment right before the bridge and you're going, I really want to like quadruple that. I want to give that a little bit more space. You can, and it's super, super easy. How you do that is you just select that locator, go to the very end, just hold shift. Then by using Command E, you're able to make a cut in that. And then I just go through and I can just double by holding Option. I can just drag those out and just double them. And then the next thing I do is I just replace the guides for that as well. So I'll copy it, Command C, and then I can just paste.
Oh, dude. That was a ninja move right there, what you just did.
So now if you listen back.
Interlude, 2, 3, 4.
So say you want to have like a little bit of a moment, you want to read some scripture, you want to talk about the song a little bit. Now you have as long as you want.
Interlude, 2,
and it was
3,
super
4.
quick, super easy. And what you can like, you can even blend these tracks together. A thing that you won't hear is that drum hit. So like you can even blend them together.
Yeah, right.
So now you have this huge long interlude, and it took 10 seconds to make, and then it's already ready. You're good to go. You can just hit play and it's going to work. Same thing with choruses. If you wanted to maybe do that again at the end, this outro, it's the same thing anywhere you go. And having these locators just give you an awesome like entry point to be able to do that, because you can see everything super, super quickly. So if you wanted to do another outro, it's super easy. You've got another outro, perfect, and it's ready to go. Another huge benefit is you can also drop locators. How you do that is you just double click right up here and you're able to add locators. And then in any moment, if you map it to your loop and mix, if you're thinking like, hey, I want to be able to go to a chorus if I want to, you can just map it with your quantization to one bar, and then say you're playing in the middle of this interlude, and you're like, we need to go to a chorus after this. Map it to your loop and mix, and at the end of it, you can just time it just right.
Bridge.
2, chorus, all in. Super quick and super easy. As long as your team knows where you're going, classic hand motions never fail. You're able just to move wherever you want in the song using these little flags, using these locators. It's super, super helpful. And the best part, it's super simple for anyone to be able to use.
That's awesome, dude. That's a really great tip. So you cut the audio, move it down, and then use the option to...
When you hold option, you're able just to copy and drop new
duplicate
samples wherever you want.
That's killer. Now, do you ever glue the stuff back together? Do you consolidate it ever, or do you just leave all the cuts?
It depends. It depends on what we're doing. There's time, like last night, I'm at my college group and we're doing a set. I will never consolidate for my college group because it's just a space where we have a lot more freedom. So our worship leaders will be like, hey, can we actually double that chorus right there? So I actually never consolidate. I'll blend and I'll fade, and I can show you how to do that really, really quickly. All you have to do, especially in Ableton 10, it's super, super easy to do. You can open up these stems, and this block right here, if you just drag it in either direction, it's going to let you just blend, which is super nice.
Yeah, do a crossfade.
A crossfade, it makes it super nice. And like even stuff like this, I can just blend that out. The drum hits that I know I don't want in there, it's super easy to use. But for a weekend service, when I know like this is what we're going to do, this is the plan, this is what the team knows, I will then go and consolidate it earlier in the week, because it is true, the less that you have your computer do, the less of a chance anything is going to happen. Personally, I've never had Ableton crash on me using stuff like this, even with all the cuts. But I just know that the more cuts and the more fades and the more everything that you're doing, the more your computer has to work. So I try to do everything I can just to make sure it's the simplest, easiest thing to run. So that would be consolidation. All you have to do for that is you can then select everything and then Command J. It'll go through and it'll consolidate. And what that does, it just blends all of those stems together like it was one stem. And that's a super great tool to use, especially if you're doing a lot of warping with keys, if you're doing a lot of warping with timing, if you're doing a lot of crossfades. That's just a lot of processing your computer has to go through in every single moment. So when you consolidate, it kind of rewrites the files as that's what it was originally. So now your computer doesn't have to go through all the process of this is a cut, this is a fade, this is a key change, this is a tempo change. It's just that's the way.
Do you have to consolidate though, or could you actually just leave those edits as they are, and then when you drag them into like when you're going to bring this into a set list, which I think you're going to show us here soon? Would all those edits come in too, or do you need to consolidate for that to happen?
The edits will come in. Here's something a little bit tricky. Remember the automation that we talked about? Dragging it in, if it's the first song, nothing will happen. If it's the second song, and I'll show you in a second, we drag in to a different key, a different time that it wasn't at before. So when I have Lion and Lamb and I'm going to drag in Living Hope, I'm dragging Living Hope into 90 BPM. So it's going to speed it up quickly. It's going to do it immediately. If you have a ton of cuts, a ton of fades, there is a chance that some of those fades will be broken apart to match the new time. But then when you drag it back to 72, it'll go back to what it was. I always recommend, if like this is what you're going to be doing, just consolidate it. Like if this is the arrangement that you're choosing to do with your 4 interludes, consolidate it and then save a new copy. And then I would just save it to the same project because it's the same files, and just call it Lion and the Lamb extra long interlude. Here's something that I've always been doing. I know that when I program something, there's a chance that I'm going to do it again, and the chance is honestly pretty big that we're going to do that same set, that same arrangement again in a different weekend. So what I try to do is I'm going to make sure that I save my work, just so that when my worship leader's like, hey, whatever that 4 interlude one was, I want to do that one again. Let's do that one. I go, great. And I can just drag it in because I know I've done it before. Same thing if you're moving arrangements around. If you're going to want to do a chorus at the beginning of the song, you might want to do that again. So it's a good idea just to save it as a copy, just so you have that to use later to your
Yeah,
advantage.
that's smart.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that when you first buy a track from Loop Community, you set up an individual Ableton session for
Mm-hmm.
every song you have.
Yep, every single one.
Okay.
These three I just did last night in preparation for today, but like this is what I was working on. I just every single set, like every single song that we add, the first thing I do is I download them, I lay them out in a session, and I program them just like this. I get
Okay.
everything laid out just so it's done. Another huge benefit that I have for my team is I'm able to export every flow. So if I've got a drummer and he's like, hey man, like what's that drum part? I'm a guitar player and a keys player. I'm not going to be able to go like, it's this 16th note thing into this big fill, and I'm not going to try to explain it to him because I know I couldn't do a super great job at it. What I could do is I can go into my Ableton session, I can boost the drums, I can either boost it here at 6 dB, or I can just go over here to my sample window and bring it up a little bit. And you get there just by clicking on the stem. And then that drum part is sitting on top of the mix. He can clearly hear that. And then I would go, I'd export that. And how you do that is Shift Command R. You're able just to hop right to export. And there's always different ways that you can get there. You can always just go right up to File and Export as well. Everything is there for you. But the easiest way is just to learn these hotkeys.
Yeah,
I found
export.
them
The hotkeys do save a lot of time, but I was just going to really quickly say, yeah, you need to export the drum intro after the bridge of Lion and Lamb for every drummer in the world, I feel like. Because I feel like every worship drummer I've ever played with, like, never really nails that exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good... I can see why you would want to do that.
Exactly. It's like... Now they can clearly hear it. So
Yes.
I will always just bounce it. And with Ableton, you can save it as an MP3. You can save it as a wave. It's super easy. I'll bounce it straight to my desktop, and I'll just go, drums, Lion and the Lamb. And then I'll bounce that. It'll save it, and then I throw it right into PCO for all the drummers for the entire team. And I'll do the same thing with bass. I'll do the same thing with acoustic guitar, with electric guitar, with piano. It's just I have the stems. I'm going to use them as best as I can. So that is a huge tool to use. Always be setting your team up for a win using your stems.
And then I cut you off, but I think that hotkeys are a huge time saver. And you can find the hotkeys, by the way, by just clicking right on the menu. Mm-hmm. And it shows you what the hotkeys are.
Everything has hotkeys. If you go through, you can find it, like you can see everything has hotkeys. You have your edit MIDI map, you have your edit keys map, you have all of your creation. You can add a MIDI, add an audio, you can add a return, you can edit things. Everything is there. Like here is rename, here's paste time, everything is ready, but it just saves so much time when you get in the process of just learning those hotkeys, because it's kind of like learning a language. It's a little bit tricky, it's a little bit hard, there's a lot to remember, but once you do, it's just like from the back of your hand and you just know it. I saw online you can get for MacBooks at least, you can get these covers that have all the hotkeys written on the actual cover. That's a huge tool. I just saw it on Amazon one day. I'm like, that's great, because like it has all of the hotkeys on this little cover so you can learn them. But as soon as, like, I would just say learn them as quick as you can. It's just going to help you in the long run.
Yeah. So you set up every single song like this. It probably takes how long per song to set up?
When I first started, like, don't be discouraged when you're learning it. It took me maybe half an hour per song just to like get it set up, just because I was still learning the process, learning the hotkeys, getting everything ready. But now, like I said, I always just start the song. I'll get my tracks from Loop Community, I'll throw them in, and then I'll hit play, and I'll go right to work, figure it out. And most of the time, I'm able to be done halfway through, so in about like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Like you get pretty quick at it.
It's a good way to learn the song too. Do you also set up the MIDI cues in this, like for lyrics, or would you do that somewhere else?
I do that in a session basis, but it depends. Like, again, if you're going to do it again, I always recommend doing it in this view will let you use that again. So I would highly recommend, if you're like, we're going to do this exact same thing, I would definitely do that. And how I just really quick, I want to be able to have time to get into some other stuff, but a MIDI channel for lyrics, how you would do that is you'd make a simple MIDI channel, one thing that you would have to do, I don't have it installed in this laptop, but it's the same process. When you go down to your MIDI and there's these outputs, if you have your Pro Presenter or PowerPoint or whatever you use hooked up, if you have those MIDI drivers, you can just then assign a channel. And then there's actually some packs that you can download online that have like all of those specific commands, like next slide, next playlist, next aspect, everything like that that you're ready to do. And it's the same thing. You can just then go in, use Shift Command M, make your MIDI commands, and I would always name them like slide 1, and then next slide, if it's going to be here, make it slide 2. And then what we do when we use MIDI to control our lyrics, I use the next slide feature. So I'll build all my slides out, then I'll go, and I always use this note down here. So this is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain it. Let me know if I'm going too quick. But this is the MIDI window, the MIDI Studio in Ableton. Every single MIDI channel has its own. They all share on the same channel. So if I have a note C-2 here, and then I have the same note up here, C-2, that's the same note because it's on the same channel. But with Ableton, you also have 16 channels to work with. So I always run our MIDI channel 1. I'll make sure it's down here because these notes aren't being used. I'll go, boom, this is next, and then I can just replicate that and drop it in every single one. And then every single time it hits, you'll see it. You can see it hit right over here.
Intro.
Every single time it hits that, it'll automatically skip to the next slide for Pro Presenter. But I know I went really quick. I would love to talk about it more if there's ever an opportunity. But Matt, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that.
I know what you're doing. So, is there anything else you would do to set up a song before you actually build a set list?
Yes, I actually got into this a little bit more recently. Something that helps me with my workflow is I will go through and I'll turn off the tracks that I know I'm not going to use before and save that as a different version. So I would quickly go through and go, cool, if I've got a full team, I'm not going to use drums, I'm not going to use bass, I'm not going to use acoustic 1, electric 1 and 2, or that piano. And then I'll automatically turn them off. And I like to color them black before, just so I can look at it from wherever I am on stage and clearly see like what is on, what is off.
Right.
So
But
then
you leave them
after
there,
this,
because then you could always solo them if you want to use them for a training purpose.
People ask me like, why wouldn't I just delete them? And I always go like, everyone's been in this situation. Let's just keep picking on drummers, I guess, where you're going into that chord and you're like, actually that feels a little bit different. What it is isn't like that. You want to just be able to show them right off the bat. So what you can do is just solo play, and you can hear it, and it'll be running through the ears and everything, and you're ready. So I always save them. I keep them handy, and like there's always the situation of like, it's a Saturday night, your electric guitar player says, hey man, I just came down with the flu, like I can't make it tomorrow. You go, no worries, you're able to throw that right back in.
Yeah.
Haven't even missed a beat. Super useful.
What about audio routing? Do you do that in the song session, or do you do that in the main setlist session?
What's actually super helpful is you can do that from wherever you are. If I were to go, I'm gonna go into this virtual audio interface real quick. You won't be able to hear it right now, but I'll switch back afterwards. Now I can actually go and name, that was the wrong one, here it is. I have it named Ableton Live Programming. It is a virtual routing device that just like lets me name things. And another thing that I did was I was able to name all of the stems that I use. So if I go, you can even see like everything that I have. I've got pads, which are like just big moving chords, leads, which is like a piano or like a synth hook, percussion, guitars, vocals, click, guide, bass, time code. Time code's a little bit like MIDI cues. It's just an audio channel that controls our lyric videos. Some of our lyrics are lighting at our church, but it's just it's the same thing as a track. And we can talk about that if you want, but I just pre-route everything before I save this program file, just so when I drag it in, it's going to be done. It's going to be ready to go. So that's how I do it. And you can save everything. You can save the names. How you do that is I can show you real quick. You go to your output configuration and you're able to name everything here. Just if 1 and 2 is like reference tracks, you can just name it reference and just apply, and it saves it. And the reason I do that is So if there's ever a situation where drums or keys are running tracks, if I'm not able to be there, if I'm doing something else, I want what I do to be replicatable. I don't want it to be complicated. I want it to be simple. I want anybody to be able to run it. And this is a huge way to do that. Set them up, they can see exactly what it is. So if something is routed incorrectly and they're like, I can't hear bass, front of house is going like, hey, where's bass routed? You can, if it was routed to, let's say, leads, and they're like, hey, I'm not getting bass and bass tracks, you can clearly see it. Oh, I'm sorry, it's routed to leads. You can see it right here. And you can go, boom, bass.
And that's a common mistake.
Yep. Sweet.
That's a common mistake. Being able to name your outputs
I do it all the
Ableton
time.
Live
Yeah.
is a huge deal. And so that's, you could do it with a track rig if you want, just to help you remember what outputs you're sending things.
Yeah.
So, but like help me understand, what is this Ableton
it.
Live interface you're using? Like, where's this interface going?
The one that I'm using right now?
Yeah.
So this is I probably can show you. It's called Loopback. It is just a digital router, and it's just for me when I'm programming. It lets me like route things. Like you can see, all of these channels are active. It's just in Ableton, and they're routed to all of my individual channels for the weekend. But then right here, the device is missing. I run into Dante. It's not plugged in, so nothing is sending anywhere. That's why we can't hear it. But on a weekend, I plug in Dante or I plug in TracksRig if I'm at a satellite campus, and it pops right up, and I'm able to just hit play, and it works really, really well.
That's
Does that make
interesting.
sense?
So that's how somebody could pre-program TrackRig without having TrackRig present.
Yep. So like if I were to quickly go through, I could even go, okay, these are all going to be guitars, external out. I know what I'm routing it to because it's right there. Pads are obviously going to go to pads just because there are those big sounds that we use. Leads is always going to be these bottom four, the synths and the pianos. That's going to be routed to leads. If I had any vocals, I'd route them to that. But here's something that happens when you route everything to all of these different outputs. When you go back to, like, if you're just listening on your laptop like right now, they're all routed. I can't hear them now. Something that you can do though to get around that is there's these returns down here. You can see A reverb, and a lot of the time it says A, B delay. I always rename it monitor, and then I just delete the reverb that's in there. And what that lets me do is I'm able to then route all of my mapped stems. Like I've got all of my stems mapped to 7, 8, 10, 11, 6, 5. I can't hear those if I'm just on my laptop or working through the week. All I need to do is I can go over, open them up, and this right here is your A monitor, like send. If you're in session view like this, it's right here as well. Everyone like that sits there. That's your A monitor. And now, even though I'm routed to my tracks rig and everything's ready to go for the weekend, I can still hear my stems running through my A monitor. Just so I don't have to unmap anything. I can just map everything one time. Like this session, I'm going to save it as Lion and Lamb. And what I do is I just put a little programmed name right before, just so when I look at that, I know this one's ready to go. That way, I'm not dragging in one that's not ready. I'm dragging in, this is ready to go. I can drag it in and literally press play.
That's cool. Love it.
The one thing you have to remember is when you're there with your tracks rig, you got to remember to turn that A monitor off, because that's running through 1 and 2. And we send our click and guide through 1 and 2. So you don't want all of your stems running through click and guide, obviously. So just remember to turn that off. One thing that I do is I always color this like a bright red, just so like my attention goes right there and goes, gotta make sure that's turned off. I also have a sticky note right on the computer, just because like common mistakes like routing, keeping things on, leaving things off accidentally, like they happen all the time. So whatever we can do just to like stop ourselves, just because like we're busy on a Sunday, we're doing so many things at the same time. The one thing we don't want to worry about is Ableton and tracks. So like whatever you can do to simplify it and make it super consistent, I always recommend.
That's awesome, man. All right, so how in the world do you build a set list then?
So let's get into it. Let's talk. So again, I never work out of a template, so I go straight. I'm going to save that just so I have it for later. But I go straight back to an empty Ableton session. There's nothing here. And then I bring in the songs that I've done. So if I go, perfect. So program Lion and Lamb, it's ready to go. I can bring that in. And as you see, like it's now ready. One thing that you even talked about, this is in 120. because
2, 3,
you can hear
4.
the click is going real quick. All the audio is a little bit off because it's in 120. So the thing you have to remember is you got to re-automate your tempo. And all you have to do is click tempo and then just double click leader. And then it's done. It's ready to go. Now it's ready. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this back into my A monitor, turn it back on so you can hear those routed tracks. Now I'm in a new session and it's ready to go. Mapped, everything's turned on and off. It's ready for the weekend. And it's so
Intro.
after I built it, so say you built this song, you introduced this song last week. Now it's coming up this weekend. Now you can drag it in and it's going to take you literally less than a minute to get that song ready to go. So now you don't have to sit with Ableton for hours and hours and hours every single week. It's you do it once, you save it, and then you're done. And then when you want to do a new arrangement, you go back to that save, you can edit it, save a copy, and then that one's done for the weekend as well.
Okay, so
And it's
now
just-
if you want to add a second song, what happens?
Mhm.
Like, what if you want? I want a smooth transition from the end of that first song into the second song. How do you do that?
Let's do it. So if I'm going from, let's do Waymaker. So this is my folder from the tracks that I have. So Waymaker, I've got my program file. It's the same programming as what we just did. It's just for Waymaker instead. Exactly the same. I will program every single song like this just to keep it simple, keep it consistent. So then I always drag it to the end, make sure the tempo is automatically going to snap. You can kind of see even where I click, like if I'm here, it's 90. If I'm here, it's 120. If I'm here, it's 68. All of your tempo switches automatically thanks to those tempo automations. Super helpful.
Yeah, that's cool.
One thing, if it ever gets cut off like this, I can show you why that happened. When I drag it over, if there's ever any overlap like this, that happens when your tempo is getting stretched and compressed and moved around. It's not a big deal. You just select all, and then you can just drag it out, and then it's fixed. As long as you don't consolidate a cut like that, you'll be fine. But that happens occasionally when you're dragging songs around because of how quickly the tempos are changing.
Yeah.
But say you want to have a great transition. You're out of line in the land. Let's bring those stems back in so I can hear.
And 2, 3, 4.
One thing that you want to do is I just line up and think band-wise as well as tracks. Is band going to do a big crash out there? Like if I were playing and planning that, I would definitely think through, okay, a band is going to do a crash out and we're going to swell into Waymaker. So then what I would do is I would just drag this up and you're able just to combine them. I like to combine my clicks, tempos, and keys and my locators just to keep everything clean and everything concise, and you can see like everything automatically just like shifted over. Something that also might happen is if you're switching tempos that quick, it might push back one of your stems like this. Same thing though, just drag it back. That stuff happens occasionally, and it's a little bit annoying sometimes, but it's the smallest detail and it's the smallest inconvenience for what you get. Because now let's listen through it.
And 2, 3, 4.
Here's that new tempo.
Intro. 2, 3, 4.
Super clean, super quick. You're able just to go from one song to the next, and you don't have to trigger anything. You only trigger it once from the start of the set, and it will literally run from start to finish through your entire set for you. It is super clean, super simple, and working with things like, if you're going to get into working with things like MIDI and working with things like PowerPoint and Pro Presenter and lighting and even audio, and if you get into lyric videos, it makes it even easier to have start to finish your entire set ready to go. Another thing is if this is going to be a 2-song set, the first thing I will do after I consolidate and just make sure everything is dragged out to where it needs to be is I will then go and bounce this entire section and send it to my team, because I know, okay, cool, I've got it ready, and now I can send it to them and it's going to be ready. Here's something that I made a common mistake in programming this way. I didn't pay attention when I selected everything, so I'm going to show you what happened here. When I moved it up, I didn't select to the very end. Something that happens a lot is if you forget to select to the very end, like this, that's okay. I can fix that in a little bit, but you need to make sure to select all of this and drag it up together just to make sure your tempos and everything stays the same. Because then when you drag it out, again, not a big deal. You're able just to get it all back to what it was. You're able to clean it up a little bit, and then you're ready to go. And now I've got this entire set ready, and it took 5 minutes, and I'm ready.
Could you
Set's ready. I can.
Do you have a third song you can add to the set?
Yeah, of course. If I've got my last song, "Living Hope." I'm gonna go through changing a key as well, which will be fun. "Living Hope," where'd I put it? Oh, I moved it on that set. Huh. Did you see where it went? I dropped it in the wrong folder. Oh, there it is. Same programming as usual. And then same process, strike to the very end. I always like to layer my endings and my count-offs. I think it makes for a great transition because as one song ends, one song begins, and it's super helpful, especially with stems, because you can see that overlap. It provides this nice little filler. So now that song is ready. I'm going to do the same thing, drag it back, make sure everything's done, make sure everything's to length. And I delete the excess reference and locators. I forgot to mention this in the first step, but clicks, tempos, and cues, I put them in another group just like my stems. I call it references. You could also call them just resources. You can call them click guide. You can call them whatever you want. It's just a place so that everything is like a little bit more collapsible, a little bit smoother, a little bit simpler looking. So after that, like you can hear, like if you're in the end of this song,
End, 2, 3, 4.
here's that new tempo.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Into Living Hope. And it's super quick, it's super simple, but another thing that you could even do is like say, let's go through key changes. Super simple. Just like in session, it's an arrangement view. You're gonna want to select everything that has a note, a melodic note. First thing you're gonna want to do is you're gonna warp them.
Wouldn't it have been warped already?
Because I only warp my tempos.
Oh.
And there's a little bit of a reason for that. Especially
I
like
thought
right
everything
here.
was warped.
I try not to, because when you warp everything, it doesn't let it be as flexible as you want it to be at times. Like this right here is a great example. Lion and the Lamb. I want those stems to really carry on in that key. If it were warped and consolidated to 90, it would duck out pretty quick, especially considering it would be 90 and 68 BPM. It'd go away pretty quick. I like to have that filling space of some stems. After like one song, 3, and boom.
Okay.
It slows down, but
So
all those stems continue through, and it provides this really nice like gap there. Because I'm gonna have my band swelling, I'm gonna have them crashing out a little bit, but as well, your stems are gonna be like fading out a lot slower. If I were to warp them, it would speed them up, and they'd be gone before I could even get to the next part. You definitely can, and if you're wanting to change tempos, let's also do that as well. Say I want to slow down Living Hope. Let's go through that. At that point, if I'm gonna want to change the tempo of Living Hope, then I'm gonna want to warp everything, my cues, my drums, everything. After that, I've slowed them down, I've warped them all. Then you're gonna go to tempo, and you're gonna be able to easily switch it to whatever you want. You can go all the way up to 999. It's super flexible. But say I want to go to 70. One thing that you just have to do is you have to re-enable that tempo automation. So when you put a new one in, I always recommend just double-clicking your leader. Now it's going to snap to 70. Now we're in 70 BPM. One thing that I would change
Intro, 2,
is just make sure you change that
4.
tempo. So now we're in 70 BPM, and it's super quick. Say you want to speed it up to 76. Same thing. Now we're ready to go.
Verse,
Say you
2,
wanted to be
3,
dead center,
4.
74. It's super quick, and even my clicks, my guides, all of my stems, they'll follow that tempo automation when they're warped. If they're not warped, they won't follow. They'll stick to that 72, which can be useful, but it could be detrimental if you're trying to change tempos as well.
And then how would you change the key of the song?
I'd go down to whatever carries a note, bass through tenor. I'd select them, make sure they're warped. Ableton will most of the time put you right to beats. Beats is it helps warp drum samples, speeding up and slowing down. It was not made to do transposing and stuff like that. So I would always go to complex. Another trick that you could use, you just have to be a little bit careful. If you want electric and vocal tracks, if you use Complex Pro on those, it helps even a little bit more to really open up those highs, open up those lows, and make it sound a whole lot smoother in a different key. So I'm only going to go up one. I'm going from E flat to E. So then I'll make sure I have all of my tracks selected from bass to tenor, all of those melodic tracks. I'll make sure they're warped, and I'll just hit one. I'm going up one step. Now we're in the key of E. And it's super easy.
3, 4.
Another huge trick that I've been using is if you've got a song like Living Hope into Waymaker, if you've got the similar tempos, I always try to get them to be a little bit like of a mashup. And how I do that is I'll change Living Hope tempo to 68. It might be a little bit slow, but it might be doable. And then I'm able to go and I don't want to drag these, so holding command, you can deselect. I can drag these over and I can even get that transition a little bit closer and it feels really good. So if you're playing this outro, let's skip a little bit ahead. Be ready for Living Hope.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
And you're able to combine them, get them even tighter.
Yeah,
if you
cool.
want to. It doesn't always work that well. It really has to be similar tempos, but stuff like Phil Wickham, Great Things, and The Love Awakens Me, and The House of the Lord, we've done a medley of all of those songs since they're a little bit similar in key and tempo, and you can get them real close, and it's really, really fun, really cool.
So that's really awesome, man. All right, so we've got like 5 minutes left. I want to throw a curveball question at you. Let's just say I'm the worship leader, and I'm like, okay, cool, Connor, this looks great. However, the first song, which I think was Lion and the Lamb, we actually now want to do at the end where there's like one chorus. We want to do that chorus 2 times. How would you do that if you've already built the set list? Because you showed us how you would do it in the song session. How do you do it in the set list session?
Exactly the same. So say they're like, hey, I want to do this chorus again. Something that you have to pay attention to is you got to remember the dynamics of the song. So it's going right into that big all in. If he's like, I want to do that one twice, I'm going to build it the exact same way. I'm just going to then select the whole set. I'm going to select everything, make a cut here, and do the same thing. Drag everything over, hold Option, and drop. And then I'll just back my cues up so I get that cue into chorus, but then I'm ready to go.
2, 3, 4.
One more chorus. At the end of this chorus, it's going to do it again.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
Another chorus.
Okay, here's another
It's
one.
going to hit your... Yeah.
What if now I'm like, you know what, Connor? We don't want to do On Lion and the Lamb. We don't want to do the bridge.
Sweet.
Cut the bridge.
The same thing I would do is instead of going to this interlude, I just think dynamics of song. This interlude right here, bring it down. I'm going to go, let's skip right to this vamp. That I'm going to go, great. I'm going to select all of this space right here minus that vamp. Command E, and I'm just going to cut it out. And then I'm going to go back, select my whole set, and I'm going to be able to drag it over. Here's something that does happen. Like I said, when you move those tempos around, same thing. Just make sure you drag them back out.
Okay.
And again, it does not take a long time at all. Got my chorus. Now we've got no bridge.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
Now we don't have
So
a
the
bridge, but like I said, when you move things around so quickly, especially with new tempos, it might move some things around. But again, everything can be fixed, especially since you've programmed it automated to a tempo. You just drag them back out, just like
yeah,
that, and then delete the excess.
right. So the trick there is selecting the entire set when you're moving it, because you don't want to just select half of it and move.
Hmm.
And
Here's
I saw
another
what you
trick.
did. You selected the top left corner and then held shift, right, and selected everything on the
Yep.
bottom right corner.
Here's another trick that I think Ableton is huge about doing. Say that your worship leader goes, "Hey, we might not do that bridge. I don't know." I've been in situations where a worship leader goes, "Hey, I might do this, I might not," and I go, "When are you gonna let me know if you're gonna do it?" He's like, I'm gonna know like in the song. I'm gonna go, "Okay, cool." What I would do in that situation is I'm gonna use something a little bit more complicated, but I'll try to explain it. Ableton controls. What that is utilizing an IAC driver, which are built into the MacBooks. It's like a MIDI device in your computer. And how you do that is if you can, I hope you can still see my screen. Can you?
Yep, I got it.
It's in your audio media setup. You can go to your window. It's right here. Here's all the devices, but it is this IAC driver right here. It's built into everything. You can go to your audio MIDI setup and you can name it Ableton controls. Boom. Then you go to Ableton, you go to your MIDI, you turn them all on. Then you can go to a MIDI track, you make one, and I just call it controls. I'll put it to Ableton controls bus. And all I'll do is I'll kind of set up a little bit of this option. I'll make a MIDI clip and I'll name it redirect because it would redirect me to the end. I'm going to drop a locator, a little flag. I'll name it F#8 because that's the note I'm going to use. F#8 here, and I can MIDI map it to that note as long as my Ableton controls are also. I know I'm moving really quick, so let me know if I need to re-explain. I'd love to. But at the end of this chorus, I can drop it to go right to that vamp. So say we're playing, and the rest of the song is still here. Like it's still going to happen. If this is on, it won't. It'll skip. So say worship leader looks at me and goes, "Connor, skip the bridge, skip the bridge." I'll go, "Guys, let's skip." And it hops right to that vamp.
2, 3.
No bridge. I didn't touch it. It hops for me. Say we're in the middle of it and he goes, "Connor, we got to do that bridge." I use my loop mix and I just turn it off. And it's going to go right past it into that bridge. And I'll show you.
Interlude 2.
It didn't trigger it because it's off. Now we're in it. It's super helpful to have stuff like that built around your set to be super flexible. Because that stuff does happen and it's important to be able to move around. You don't want to be controlled by your tracks. You want to be able to control them. But it can be a little bit difficult to do when you're on stage. But it's totally possible, especially when you got stuff like a loop miss next to you. I have my loop miss and a loop miss mini. There's that mini. I always just have my controls. I've got redirects, loops, and anything built onto that. So in a moment, I can just hit skip or turn on, turn off, and just I can know, cool, at the end of this, it's going to skip this section or it's going to go back to this section, anything like that, just to stay flexible by keeping my hands free and still be able to keep going in the set. So that's what I would do if the worship leader is like, I don't know if I'm going to. Another thing you could use that for is if like you're in the middle of your service and the service producer's like, "Hey, we're super short on time. Any way to cut, like shorten it a little bit?" You take that same locator, put it to your outro, and when that is on, just turn it back on your loop in this. It's gonna skip right to that outro. I'm not even gonna touch it, but you see it trigger it.
4.
Cool.
And it's just gonna be able to skip ahead, and it works super, super well.
That's pretty awesome, man. That's a expert tip right there. So
I
I've learned
love
a
it.
ton here, man. This was so helpful. I love watching people build sets in Arrangement View because everybody does it a little different, and that's what's cool about Ableton Live is there's no like right or wrong way to do it, and you can like
Exactly.
you can accomplish the same thing in so many different ways. And just watching you do what you did there, I was like, oh, that's cool. I did not know you could do that. Like for example, I didn't actually realize you could use the original click file as the tempo track file. I was always bringing in like a blank audio clip, but that's smart. Like why not just use the one that goes along with this track anyway? So
Another thing that you could do is if you don't want to use a MIDI click, Sorry to interrupt there, but
No,
if
it's
you're
fine.
like, I don't want to use a MIDI click, I want to use the tempo, just
Yeah.
copy and paste it, go boom, this is going to be my clicks. And then this isn't going to be warped, but I'll just turn it back up.
Yeah.
Now you've got your tempo and you've got your clicks, and then it's ready
Yeah.
to go.
I love
Sorry.
that, man. There's so many ways to do the same thing. It's awesome.
Mhm.
So program success, if people wanted to sign up for that, don't we have what's like? Is there like a Loop Community code or something? I can't remember how we set this up, or like what should people do if they want to go to Program Success and join what you're doing?
There's a link that I think, I can't remember if Loop Community, it might be in the bio, but I have a little form. If you're from Loop Community, I just want to know that so I can further equip you. Maybe we can get you some tracks, we can get you something to help
Yeah.
you start using Ableton. When you check out, when you become a member, I reach out to everybody personally and just schedule a phone call, get in touch. Just let me know, like, hey, Matt sent me over here. I was at the Ableton webinar. I'd love to show you some stuff. I would love to meet with you and just explain some things to you. I'd love to know you're from the community so we can get you some resources and everything like that. So
Yeah.
if you ever want to, it's on Instagram. I know that Loop Community has done an awesome job just shouting this out. You can also find me on Instagram, just looking up Program Success. You can go to Loop Community. I'm there. I think I'm tagged. Click it, sign up, DM me. I've got my number there as well. Text me, call me. I'm available. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to show you some stuff. I'd love to get connected. And just let me know. I'm from Loop Community. And then we'll get connected. Man. We'll work on stuff. So it'd be great. I'd love to get to know anybody who wants to work on some Ableton stuff.
That's awesome, man. I'm a big fan of what you're doing. Thanks for showing us how you build sets. That's very helpful.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome time.
Yeah, man. I'll see you soon.
All right. I'll see you.
All right. That was such a helpful interview with Connor. I would say that, if you're a worship leader using Ableton Live, you could save a lot of time by hiring someone like Connor to make all your sets for you. And that's what Program Success is. Go to programmedsuccess.com. You can find him on Instagram, as he was saying, as well. And go try it out. Try it out for a month. And make sure you use the Loop Community code in the form. Type in that you're from Loop Community so that he can help you better know that you're coming from us. And I think that I really like what he's doing. I think it's cool because it saves worship leaders a lot of time. If you're using Ableton Live, this will save you a ton of time in using Ableton Live. Let him do it for you. He's the expert in it. And it's going to save a lot of time for you so that you can maybe focus more on writing songs or doing other things inside of your worship ministry. So check it out, programmedsuccess.com. I learned a lot of stuff actually from watching that. I've been using Ableton Live for almost 20 years, and he was doing some stuff in there that I'm like, that's a cool tip. So that's just what's cool about Ableton Live is there's so much you can learn. It's endless. And so that was really great. Thank you, Connor, for joining us at that. You guys, down in the comments of this video, type in what's the one thing that you learned from Connor today. I would be curious, what's the main thing that you thought was the coolest feature, the coolest tip that you walked away from learning? Type it right now in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. We're a community. We want to hear what your thoughts are on this. And also, if you have any other tips or videos or links that you want to share, type them in the comments. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of when we're doing other live events. We have a lot of great interviews coming up for these Loop Live shows. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you soon.